I think in simple terms, simplistic terms, was clearly to keep Ulster British. And plus there was an element of, well, you kick me, I'll kick you. And you're blowing up my... I mean, I live in London, you're blowing my city up. I don't take to that too kindly. They were thought to have been responsible providing the IRA with information for the murder of a car bomb of a very prominent loyalist, John McMichael, very respected man on a militant level and on a political level. When Michael did what he did in the cemetery, I think that I was disgusted, not with what he'd done. I was disgusted because a lot of people deserted him. They shied away from him. They basically said, we know you're targeting somebody in Manchester who's a Republican. We know that 2 ex-army fellas are basically going to take this fella out, and your part in this was to supply the guns. I couldn't believe it.
Boom, we're on.
Oh, God.
Today's guest, we've got Frankie boy Portinari. How are you, brother?
Pleased to meet you.
Good to see you.
Very pleased to meet you.
First of all, thanks for coming on the show. You sent me your book a while ago last year. Fascinating read. A man who grew up in London, football fan, became football casual, to then running the London UDA. A very powerful man who ran organisations. You've been charged with guns, explosives, a lot of serious stuff. A lot of people who I know, people who's been on the show. You've also been on the brother Sean Atwood's podcast as well.
Good old Sean.
Yeah, good guy. Shout out to Sean. Is it 2 podcasts you've done with Sean now?
Sean now,
and they last for a good long time. Your Sean's 2-3 hours at a time.
He should have been an interrogator, Sean. He's a good boy.
Yeah,
He's a good boy.
It's good to have you on.
Yeah, good. Thank
you. To hear your story.
It's
very fascinating. Yeah. How have you been?
Okay, yeah. Funny enough, since Sean's podcasts, I have moved on. That's nice because he does tend to ask you, obviously, what you're going to do next, where you're for now, and I kind of had an idea where I was going. Wasn't quite sure I was going to get there, but he has been helpful. Sean, he's given me some good advice. I've learnt a lot off of him. There's other people I've come across via the book, and not least of all yourself, because it wasn't for the book I wouldn't have met yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm getting into a world of doing speaking, being a consultant, because especially in England or the mainland in general, people don't tend to have anybody to go to and approach and ask for factual events that have gone on in the past, because in some respects they don't know we exist, if you want. People would understandably tend to go to Northern Ireland and do their research and their diplomas. I've had emails before now from university students, they want to do a thesis and so on, and they might ask you. But we've tended to be overlooked, and that was the thinking behind the book. It was one of, friends had said, if you got knocked down by a bus tomorrow, Frank, that'd be 30 odd years of our history gone out the window, and no one's has ever documented it, and that needs to be done. And I bottled it a few times. I started it, I put it down again, and but eventually I got there, and I'm glad I've done it now. I've tried to make it as warts and all, Some of it's put me in a good light, some of it's probably not with some people, but it's the truth. Yeah. It's just the truth.
I think the name for the books suits it from one extreme to another, from the streets of London to being bang in the middle of the conflict in Northern Ireland. It is something that...
Well, also something I'm very conscious of with Sean and yourself, and I've watched all your podcasts. It's befitting because that is my life, and when you've talked about having an addictive nature, that is me. I clearly know that I've got an addictive nature. So if I get involved with something, I tend to take it
all or nothing
to its extreme. So that seemed, the title of the book, From One Extreme to Another, pretty much summed up my life.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, as you know, you watch the show, so I always go back to the start with a guest. Let's go right back to the start, where you grew up and how it all began.
Well, I still live in Kentish Town, North London, to be honest. But I've always lived in Kentish Town, North London, which is it's part of the borough of Camden, and Camden wasn't a real borough. It was an invented borough. It consisted of Hampstead, which was very affluent, St Pancras, which was very poor, and then the southern end of it was Holborn, which again was quite affluent. And some genius decided, we'll merge all these boroughs together and we'll all be the same. We'll all be equal. Well, I don't know how many people lived in Hampstead and Holborn that had an outside toilet, and had a tin bath nailed up on the wall in a yard. So I don't know where we all became equal all of a sudden, because I certainly didn't feel the effects of it. We were pretty poor. We were a pretty poor family.
So how did that affect you then, growing up?
I think at the time you think it affects you, because if you see people with and you're without, you clearly must be envious to a certain degree. I would imagine you must want what they've got. But I don't subscribe to this business of where later on in life, and you take certain paths, that you use that as an excuse. I definitely do not subscribe to that. It would be too easy to be a villain, stand in the dock of a court and have your brief turn around and say, Your Honour, he came from this deprived background. He had holes in his shoes when he went to school. I don't subscribe to that. I'm sorry. In fact, I think if anything, you use that as a tool to succeed. I think you use that as a reason to say, well, hold on, I'm not going to stay like this. I'm going to improve my life. I'm going to move on and make sure my kids don't have to have a similar situation. I don't. I think that's a weak, and I hear people use it all the time. Like, I can't. I didn't have this and I didn't have that. Well, no, I don't subscribe to that at all.
So your teenage years then, Frank, when did you start getting into trouble? Because I know you were a massive fan of football. You loved the football. You're a massive Tottenham fan. But then you became massive in the casual scene as well.
I was a good kid. I went to Sunday school. I didn't have any reason to be a bad kid, because I was... and again, this isn't making excuses, but, my real father left, I think, when I was about 2. And then I got a stepfather, and he'd done his best. He had his own problems, but he'd done his best, and I appreciate him far more now as an adult. Probably wasn't mature enough to, appreciate it when I was a child. But no, I was a good kid. I went to Sunday school. We got into mischief like every kid, where we grew up. We took advantage of the environment that we lived in. So you learnt that they demolished a lot of houses where we lived, for example. So we learnt, when people move out, you go over the back wall, you find old furniture, books, ornaments, and you took your down Junkie John's down the market and you made a few quid. And then you learnt the value of lead, copper, cast iron, and you took that down to the fella down St Pancras Way, and he gave you money. You learnt quickly how to make, ends meet. School-wise, I was primary school, bright kid. I was told I was a bright kid. Secondary school, different matter, because you're the big boys, ain't you?
Yeah, teenager.
With the big boys. My mum sent me to a school because it was called Sir William Collins. She thought it was posh because it had a Sir in front of it. It couldn't have been in a rougher area if it tried. It was between King's Cross, Euston and St Pancras. Big families, Irish, Scottish, Geordie, Scousers and Cockneys. Can you imagine what the pubs were like? It was rough. It was really, really... My mum sent me there, bless her. It got to the stage where one day you have to have a fight, don't you? I wasn't a fighter. I was not a fighter. I was a comedian, if anything. And one day we're in the changing room we were so poor, I didn't even have the full Tottenham kit. I only had a pair of socks.
Odd socks.
Yeah, well, right, they were the same colour. They weren't that poor. There wasn't one home and one away. I mean, I tried to match them up. And, the kids had the socks, throwing them around, I'm a fool, one running around trying to catch socks. Lands up in the hands of a kid who was better off than me. I've said it previously. If we come back from a school holiday and the teacher said, well, where have you all been? He'd been skiing. I've been in a caravan in Great Yarmouth. He's just one of them kids who had it all. We had everything. He was unlucky. He landed up with the socks. I've jumped on him, got him on the floor, hands around the neck, and let go. He's going to kill me, isn't he? Up at school, he's going to kill me. Everyone knows he's going to kill me. And everyone's saying, go out the other door, go out the other gate. Don't leave by that gate. And I thought, do you know what? I'll take if he's going to hit me, he's going to hit me. How long is it going to work for, if you like? And went out the back gate, he's waiting with all his entourage, cheering him on. And he stood there and he's going to do this and he's going to do that. And I thought, hold on, he's not got around to hitting me yet, has he? And I thought, fuck it, in for a penny, I'll try it. I hit him, he fell on the floor. Well, the next day, I was the most popular kid in my class. That weekend, Frank, you want to come to the community centre, youth club? Someone's having a party the weekend, you want to come along? You suddenly realised you had a power that you hadn't possessed before. You didn't feel the necessity. Of course, over the next few weeks, every lunatic in the school tried it on with me, and I invariably lost most of the time. But you'd gained a bit of respect. And what that also did was say to me, why would you ever back down again? Now you've stood up once, why would you ever back down to someone again?
Do you think that was the start then, Frank, of the violent past, the start of the getting involved in crime, the fights? Because you were not just a normal boy who loved to go to football to be then...
So where I lived, it was a big Irish community where I lived, and families had 3-4 brothers. If you fell out with one brother, you was in trouble. And they probably have God knows how many cousins as well. It wasn't wise to say I'm a fighter. It wasn't good, but I knew I could look after myself. And then I went to football. We used to play football for a start. Listen, we were football mad. And we didn't have football pitches in them days. You played from one side of the street to the other until it got dark. You literally played, till the street lights went off, you stayed out and played football. And that was that. Going to a football match, God, one, if you could afford it for a start. You didn't have football on the telly, did you? You didn't have God knows how many matches on every weekend or midweek. You had to go to see your heroes. And even if you did, you couldn't necessarily get in because the crowds in those days were massive. And that was standing, that wasn't seating. That was, I can remember going over Tottenham and getting over there at midday. And if you was playing somebody like Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool, Everton, they'd bring 8,000-10,000 fans. You might not get into your own stadium because of the amount of support that they had. But when I can't even remember the first home game I went to, and I'm quite ashamed about that. But I'd have been about 13, I suppose, about 13. And my first away game was Manchester City, and we lost 4-0. And I couldn't go on a football special, but my old man had tickets. He worked for a haulage company. He had free tickets for British Rail. So you had to get the train before. Well, every time you did that, you was the first one into that town. There'd be hundreds of skinheads waiting for you. And you walked out on your own 9 times out of 10 with your silly little scarf on, different colours to theirs, and you was about, 10 stone 7, and couldn't wait for the special to follow you, behind you, And I've gone in the wrong end. I didn't know where I was going, and we lost 4-0, say, and I got chased after the game. But at Piccadilly Station, there was all these Tottenham skinheads, and they was all like, "You all right, mate?" I said, "I just got chased and whatever." "Oh, come with us." Well, that was great because when I went to school on the Monday, people couldn't believe I'd gone to Manchester on my own. The following week, we was at home and we walked past one of the Tottenham pubs. Oh, there's all these 20-year-old skinheads going, "All right, Frank, how you going, son? All right?" I'm giving it all that, aren't I?
Swagger.
I'm showing up in front of mates. Yeah. "All right, fella." And who are they? my mates, I was up in Manchester with them last week, You start believing it. That's the trouble. You forget you are 14 and a skinny little kid. So when all the fighting starts, you think, well, I'm one of the boys, Well, you get a few clumps and you think, hold on, maybe I'm not quite as tough as well. But I did eventually, yeah.
So it started at 14?
Probably, yeah, because...
That's young, Frank.
It was only in the sense that you didn't become a better fighter all of a sudden overnight, but I had a lot of bottle. So if you was at an away game and you come unstuck, and in those days you did invariably come unstuck, I think what distinguished you was, did you stand or did you run? And I'd stand. And if I got a clump, and that was it. But people started to recognise that. People started to see that. And these fellas I know 40 years on, I cannot even tell you their name. I'll tell you where they live. I'll tell you where geographically they come from, because that's how people knew each other. I didn't necessarily ask people's name, but you knew someone was from a certain area. And if you went to Europe, again, you knew, there's so-and-so from whatever part of London it was. You might know their nickname. You wouldn't necessarily know their real name.
How many people had a tear-up back then?
Hundreds. It was hundreds. It was literally, while you was punching somebody, someone was probably punching you. You didn't know, it wasn't one-to-one in them days. It was just literally hundreds.
Did you enjoy that adrenaline,
Loved
Frank?
it. Absolutely loved it. I can't apologise. I loved it. No, I can't. I loved it. No, I did.
Yeah, I think anybody who was involved in a casual scene don't apologise.
It wasn't when we went, it wasn't. It was the 70s, so it wasn't
kicking
that
off
term,
then.
if you like, that term.
What was it called then? Did it have a name?
I mean, now they call them firms, don't they?
Yeah.
Or in them days, I think we just called it mobs. It was a mob of us and a mob of them.
Yobs.
Gang of us, gang of them. And then it became more sophisticated. It became firms, didn't it? Our firm and them. So no, our day, if anything, was skinheads was obviously a big thing. That fashion was a big thing. That went into suede heads, boot boys, all the various fashions that changed with it. And from our point of view, a good mate of mine, we'd go, we might work in the morning, and he'd have a donkey jacket on, and you'd go straight from work. And it became quite fashionable that people started to wear donkey jackets and in industrial type boots, if you like. And our little mob over Tottenham, people recognised it. We went up north. You couldn't walk out of a station and people not know who you are, because we all had donkey jackets on.
Did people know you then? Did certain fans have certain styles and certain looks? Did you know, even if they never had football colours on, that they were from a different firm?
I think fashion did play a part. Sometimes fashion, we joke about, we say about Northerners, Northern monkeys, like, no dress sense, we're from London, we're the smart boys. Well, in the 80s, Northern boys were very smart, with all the sports gear and so on, and stuff that was being hoisted from Europe and coming back. You couldn't call a Northern a scruffy anymore, because they look smart. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. In fact, if anything, some of my pals, we didn't look smart, but we wasn't necessarily trying to look smart.
Just wanted to fight.
We just wanted to have a fight.
Yeah.
So what's the sense of having an £80 fucking jumper on? Someone wants to cut you, cut my donkey jacket and I'll go and get another one next week off the council. It's
because you left school early and your mum didn't know, is that correct?
No, bless her, no.
What age were you?
What happened was she came down to school one night and she sat like this, and she sat in front of a teacher, and he said, "Oh, hello, good evening, madam. She said, I'm here to see my, talk about my son, Frankie, as she called me." And he went, "Frankie who?" And she went, "Well, Frankie Portinari." He went, "I've never met your son." And of course, as she went round the next lot of teachers, they'd never met me either. And I had to say, "Mum, where do you think you're getting them chickens from?" And, chops and all that. I was working with Jewers, butchers in Camden High Street. She didn't realise. She didn't know. And, but that's one of them things. We weren't well off. And I thought, well, do you know what? My mum had 3 jobs at some times, cleaning jobs, in the evening she'd be doing, in them days I used to call it homework, sticking things together and making things. And I thought, well, if I can be one less strain on them, I'd rather go out and work and, try and make a few quid. And that's how it started.
Yeah, fair play for thinking that way.
And I say, we all done it. We had paper rounds, we had things like, you had paper rounds, you pulled the stalls out down the market. Any way you could think of making something for yourself to look after yourself. And,
especially go to the football and stuff as well, you'd have need funds to travel and get the
I mean, I was lucky with the train thing with the old man, because I'd get free tickets. I can remember, bless her, there was a few times, because my wife's a little bit older than me, not a lot, only 6 months, but she had quite a good job in an office, And I'd say, I'll meet you at Kentish Town Station, babe, and all that. And she'd go, couldn't lend me some money because you're something go football. So I did get a subsidy up of her, if you like.
So what age did you get involved heavily in the casual scene? Because one day you get the jail twice in a day. How the fuck does that happen, Frank?
No, what it was in the 70s, and we were playing Arsenal, clearly our traditional rivals, and they all come out the road, all their boys, hundreds of them come up the road. We was outside the pub. As they went to turn to go into the stadium, it all kicked off, and I got involved, obviously, and I got nicked. Got taken down to Tottenham Police Station, and anyway, the game's over, and we're coming out. Didn't know the score. People are walking down Tottenham High Road, and I just happened to say to a fellow, "Here, mate, what was the score?" He said, "We lost 5-0. And I got nicked again. And obviously a different copper on this occasion, and he took me back into the station. Of course, it's the same desk sergeant, wasn't it? And he looked at me, he said, "I've had you once today, and already." I said, "Yeah, mate, you have, yeah." And fair play, he put me in a cell, give it an hour, let the crowd settle, and he let me go, so... but, I think it was £25 fine, which... It was in them days money. You didn't earn a lot of money, so it was enough to sting you, but it wasn't that bad. A mate of mine got a 50 because he'd been nicked previously. But that was the start of the getting nicked at the football. Yeah.
What was your biggest tear up? The one that stands out in your mind?
I would probably say Millwall. I would probably say Millwall. There'd been a programme, I think it was Panorama, and they'd done a build up to it. It was the first. Tottenham had been relegated, second division. Millwall was in the second division, and they'd really built it up between us. I mean, for weeks leading up to that, if we bumped into each other on the underground at Euston or King's Cross or St Pancras, there was a few little tear-ups, and you wait till you come over to Millwall, Bandit Country and all that lark, and Boxing Day, and I've been to a party. I've been to a Christmas party. I never left this party till 5 a.m. You think no one's going to go tomorrow. No one's going to get up and get. Cause it was like a dinner time kick-off. Everyone's going to cry off, innit? Oh, I was drunk. I'm pissed. Whatever. 8 o'clock. My mate Billy Kearns. He's come knocking on the door, isn't he? He's took the works van. He's nicked the works van. On the back of it, there's pickaxe handles, there's shovels, there's all sorts. I said, "Bill, you've got to be fucking joking, ain't you? I'm half pissed. I'd done a bottle of Captain Morgan's rum the night before." I said, "Bill, more to the point, where's everyone else? There's only me and you." No. He said, "We're going to go down to, we're going down to Old Street and Oxton. We're going to pick a few of the boys up. We're going over to London Bridge." Oh, great. He said, "And we're going to drive down Old Kent Road. There's a pub there, Millwall pub, the Canterbury. We're going to go down there, Frankie. We're going to attack this pub." All right, all sounded quite reasonable, But we got as far as London Bridge. The old Bill pulled us over. But so we got over to Millwall. It was a lot of verbal, people trying to climb over fences to get each other. But after the game was the worst I've ever seen. It was, I see a fella put a screwdriver through a fella's cheek. Now, I know the fella had done it. And even I sort of looked at him thinking, was that necessary? Was that really, is that just not a little bit over the top? People started kicking walls over, throwing bricks across the road at each other, wooden fencing. Some people were hitting each other with a wooden fencing. People pulled metal railing down and were throwing the rails like it was spears across the... And I thought, fuck this. I'll be honest with you, I think we give a good account of ourselves, but I was glad to get home. At the end of it, I was glad to get home and get in the pub and have a pint because it was just mental. I'd never seen nothing like that. But they was double tough, Millwall. I mean, you didn't go over there and take a liberty. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they've got a massive name.
I've seen a good pal of mine today afterwards.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because I've had Big Baz Barrington on, and he's a big fucking nutcase, and he's we spoke about like the casual scene back in the day. Nobody mingled from certain firms, but nowadays, like I just picked you up from the train station there, and you walked out with. It's like a firm, man. You just know these boys are ready to go. You've got Chelsea boys, Millwall boys. Because you were up here for the Old Firm game, which has been actually called off for.
Well, as I said, that wasn't my mate. Listen, I could have had a box over there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Some good friends, offered me a box and that because I've been up here previously a few weeks ago for a funeral. A very good friend of mine, Boots, and my team. I'm Tottenham. Listen, that's my team, Tottenham. But if you ask me between Rangers and Celtic, I'm going to be Rangers.
Yeah, of course.
That's just the way it is. The good thing about the Rangers thing is, it does bring a lot of us together. So I'll be in a pub in a couple of hours' time and there will be Millwall, Chelsea, West Ham, Tottenham. So it does have that effect.
Yeah.
It's good. There's still that little bit of, I'm getting on it. I can still... I went over to Tottenham the other week, a couple of weeks ago. A good friend of mine treated us to a meal and his box and that, And there's like... It was a cup game. There was 9,000 Norwich fans.
I've seen that.
You know, and they've probably never felt so confident that they can walk around Tottenham High Road. Well, they wouldn't have fucking done that years ago. You would have got 900 of them. Never mind 9,000.
It's changed now,
so
Frank.
The old memory comes back, and you think, fucking Liberty, fucking walking up the High Road. They think, and you think, hold on, what are you doing? What are you? That's just your old memories.
It's ingrained into you, but
That's your
Frank,
own memories coming back.
Do you miss it?
Yeah, I had some great times. I've had some fantastic... Listen, it's camaraderie, isn't it? It's between... You learn who your mates are, don't you? You know who's going to go... If you say, come on, let's go through that turnstile, people are either going to follow you through that turnstile or they're not.
Or run.
Right. Now, my good pal Bill, he said to me, Frankie, we're going in near end. He's about 3-4 years older than me. I went through that turnstile. That was it. There was no ifs or buts. You didn't know what was going to happen the other side of it, but you thought one night he used to have a Rover 3.5 coupe, tinted windows, gold stripe down the side, and this was in the 70s.
Shaggin' wagon.
Yes, you used to call it that. And he said, Frankie, he said they'd done this panorama thing or world. I always forget what it was called. I think it was panorama. Frankie said, we're going over Millwall's pub. He said, I'm going to go and do the fella Harry the dog because he'd been interviewed. Where's that, Bill? I didn't even know where it was. His pub, Temple Bar, it was called, over Walworth Road. Proper bandit country. I followed him blindly. 5 of us got in this car, go over to Walworth Road, parked up. Probably a Wednesday, we walked into this pub. It was absolutely banged out, this pub. The women looked violent. I mean, they looked... And you thought, fuck. We might as well have walked in wearing Tottenham kits because they clearly knew we were hostile. They clearly knew we weren't off the manor. And we didn't even get a drink. We fucking walked in, fucking turned around, walked back out again. And when you want a car to start the first time, you think, please. Please. Now, when you get back over Waterloo Bridge, you say to yourself, fucking Liberty, wasn't it? We went over there, went in there. No, listen, no. But that was my power. If he said, that's what we're doing, that's what I did. And as I say, you did. It was a massive adrenaline rush. It was.
Yeah. You got a chopper one time and went into a pub to do people. Was that football related?
Well, that was personal. No. No, that was personal. What happened there was I was working in a theatre at the time, and I said to my wife, why don't you come down after work and we'll go have a couple of pints and we'll go to a meal. And she passed this community centre, which it wasn't a black community centre. It was mixed, but a lot of black fellas used to hang about outside, and it was winter. And she had black leather boots on, a black coat, black on, and apparently one of them turned around and went, oh, here she comes, the Nazi lover. Now, I don't know whether that was meant to imply because she had all this black on and the black leather boots, or he knew me because I was quite right-wing at the time. So she's told me, and I kind of brushed it off because I thought, if I make too much of a fuss, she'll be watching me like a hawk. Everything I do, every time I go out the front door, she'll be thinking, where's he going? So I let it go. So I had to go into work the next day. Tottenham weren't playing. Went and done a few hours. It was in the days when the pubs used to shut about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I went over there at 12, had a few drinks, when I got something to eat, and I went into an hardware shop. I think you call it an axe, chopper, hatchet, small type thing. Anyway, so I bought this, locked up where I worked, went back in the pub, had a couple of more pints, called a cab, went up to my local pub, Gypsy Queen. Walked in, and it was 2 black fellas in there, which was quite rare, to be honest. And I'm not suggesting they was even the ones responsible, but I thought the fucking message is going to get back one way or the other. So I walked in, a few of the boys, all right, Frank, how's it going? You know, usual thing, excuse me. And I pulled it out, fucking smashed it into the bar. She said, well, I'll find out who's had a... She was my girlfriend at the time, she was my wife now. And I said, well, I'll find out who's had a go at my fucking bird. I said, I'll fucking do him with this. Right, everyone just sort of partied. And the governor, she was called Rosie Efron at the time, she come around a saloon bar. And she's trying to get the fucking thing. And she took me around there. Bless her, she got me a large rum and black. That was my drink at the time, rum and black. But the word's gone round, isn't it? The word's gone round the manor. So the following Saturday, there used to be a caff round the corner, Bert's Caff, round the market. All the black fellas used to stand outside the betting office. So as I come round the corner to get a bit of breakfast before I went over to Tottenham, one of the black fellas shouted, say, well, all right, Frankie, he said, no acts of you today and all that, like, and all that. I said, listen, you fucking mob behave yourself. I said, there'll be no need for it, will there? And that was it. It blew over, like, you know, and I never did find out who said what they said to her, but, you know.
Things can escalate, but Frank, fast.
Yeah, and again, it was an element of, it's not rational, is it? It's not something I would have normally considered doing, but I knew...
You protective, Frank?
I knew... Oh, just a bit, yeah. But I knew they knew who she was. And more to the point, they knew who she was going out with. I couldn't have let that go. I couldn't have swallowed that. You had to make... If you was going to do it, you had to make a big statement. You wouldn't be able to walk around where you live, otherwise, would you, in them days?
And that was you just making your statement. If it goes any further, then I'll take it further as well. That
was it. I mean, thank God, you know, it only took one of them 2 fellas to have implied it was one of them, and then God knows how that might have escalated. I mean, I'm clearly glad it didn't.
You're charged with murder.
Yeah, clearly.
So when did things start escalating fast for you? How did you start getting the reputation that you got in London from the casual scene? What age were you? I'm not.
Do you know the honest truth? I'm not so sure I did, in the sense that, you know, I can reel off lots of names to you. You know, if you name a firm from a football club, I can pretty much reel off names associated with that club or with that firm. Right. Where I lived, I was known. So eventually, you mix with other people, you drink in other people's pubs. So, for example, where we lived in Kentish Town, you had the Northern Line. So you'd have Camden Town, Chalk Farm, Hampstead, Belfast, but it'd go up to Colindale, Burnt Oak, whatever. And they had their own little firms. So after a game, you might get on the same train. You'd meet these people. So you started to become a bigger firm of fellas who started getting together. So it wasn't exclusively Kentish Town or Camden Town. We call it the 3 towns. There's Kentish Town, Camden Town and Somers Town. Somers Town was a double tough place. And what used to happen is obviously all the trains used to come into King's Cross and Pancras and Euston. So they would drink in and around Somers Town. So we'd drink in those same pubs. So every weekend you was guaranteed a punch-up with these Northerners, Midlanders, whatever. So even northern firms got to know you eventually. I mean, I've been 50 years of age, been up in Manchester, been in a pub, and a fella's suddenly gone, "You in London, mate?" And I've got, "Shit, Somerset, you know, oh, we had a tear up. We had a tear up outside the coffee house, or and people remember, so I've never set out to go, I want to be a top boy. You know, far from it. I've never wanted that. I'd rather be in the background. I'd rather go and do what you got to do and get away with it. You know, but you do if you're doing something for 30 odd years, people eventually do get to know you. They do get to recognise you. People will ask, "Who's he?" Originally, it might be, "Oh, he's from Kentish Town." And for years, people used to say to me, "Frank from Kentish Town." No one knew my surname. Mm-hmm. No one knew my surname. But no, I never set out to have that kind of reputation. But it did grow over the years. Yeah. And funny enough, it's grown more now because you do talk to each other.
Yeah. Because
you will go to each other's pub. You will have other things you're interested in, and you socialise together. But no, it wasn't a conceived idea. Oh, I must be one of the top boys. No, far from it.
So your life to be running the London Brigade UDA, how did that journey start for a London boy to be involved in the conflict in Northern Ireland? What was that progress for you to start, and then
it was because when I was a young man, 16, working class boy, very idealistic, and some young people knocked on my door one night. They were from the Young Socialists. They talked about working class people. I didn't know what working class, middle class, well, I couldn't tell you. I knew Labour was red, I knew Conservative was blue. Had a naive view of the world, if you like, at the time. But they sounded like they made sense. They sounded like they knew what they were talking about, good people. And I went to a couple of meetings. Turned out it wasn't just the Young Socialists. It turned out it was the Workers' Revolutionary Party. Now, that took on a whole different meaning because they had a world view. Mine was a local view. You know, I'm thinking of my own local working class people where I live, not what's going on in Chile or fucking, you know, South America or Africa or somewhere else. And eventually, I couldn't identify with them. I couldn't. And what was the turning point for me was they seemed to be very critical about the British Army, and they were also clearly very much into Irish politics, which I didn't understand. I had no idea. Almost 9 out of 10 of my mates where I live were Irish, so I was always in and out of their houses. I knew their mum and dads. My concept of Irish people was they owned pubs. They had some great fights outside Irish dance halls. When we was kids, we used to enjoy watching that. They got in and out the back of Murphy's vans every morning down Camden Town to go to work. A simple view of the world. That's how I saw Irish people. I didn't see Irish people as a threat to me personally, my family, my community, or anybody else. But that's how naive I was at the time. All I knew. So when these people kept saying, "Oh, the IRA this and blah," blah, I'd think, "What the fuck are they talking about? I ain't got a clue what they're going on about." And eventually I kind of moved away from that. And then one night, purely by chance, I was in a pub, a fella came in, still a good friend of mine to this day, worked down in Smithville Meat Market, and he was right-wing. Well, I no more knew what right-wing was as to what the left-wing was. And he gave me a leaflet, he started talking about things, and I kind of identified with it a little bit more. And he invited me to a National Front meeting in a hotel in King's Cross. I could identify with these people. They were working class people. They weren't middle class. They weren't using posh words and terms I clearly didn't understand what they were talking about. But they were patriotic. And it clearly brought out a patriotic side of me that I didn't know that I had. Nothing to do with race, purely to do with Britain, you know, everything good for Britain, great, and I could identify with it, and I got involved. And this is the start of the journey. This is if you take into account the football, the extremes of the football, this is where it moved into the extremes of the politics.
What age were you?
Probably then, I suppose about 19, 20.
So again, still young?
Yeah, and still naive, if I'm honest. You know, I didn't pretend to know it all, and I still don't now. But loads of people suddenly got involved at the football, pubs I went to. It became music, the music scene. You tended to either be left or right. And again, I suppose what your mates are doing, the camaraderie, and I got involved. I went to demonstrations, sold newspapers, went to meetings, and typical me, the extreme. You know, I landed up being the National Front organiser at Camden, where I lived. Now that's predictable. That's predictable. That's how I'm going to land up. And then from there, I learnt more about Irish politics. We met people from Belfast. We met people from Scotland. And things get personal, don't they? Because suddenly someone's brother's been shot or someone's uncle's gone to prison. And you stick by them, don't you? Then you start to stick by them. And fast forwarding, it got to a point where, listen, we were just cockneys. We were just, ordinary fellas. But, we'd had bombs in London. I vaguely remembered the post office tower being blown up, the restaurant at the top of that. I vaguely knew about the Birmingham pub bombings. Things started to get more, I became more educated. And so I was reading books, I was reading magazines. There was no social media then, obviously, but I'd watch the news, I'd watch different programs. And this is really fast forwarding, if I'm honest. It got to the stage where we thought, fuck this, we need to do something about this. But then how do you do anything about it? You don't know where do you start to do something about it? And what it would be, there'd be troops out parades, for example, up in Edgware Road, up to Kilburn, Cricklewood, Kilburn. Every parade had a Scottish Republican band at the front of it, And so we'd attack the parades. So you started to get a bit of a reputation then for attacking these parades. The Irish Freedom Movement used to have the anti-internment parades in Holloway Road, which in North London. And again, we used to attack them. And the police get to know you as well. Same as they know you at football, they start to get to know you. But again, we were frustrated because we were thinking, well, hold on, we're attacking the parade, they're blowing us up. Not exactly equal, is it? We need to fight back. We need to do something back. Well, where do you go to do that? We weren't Orangemen, we weren't Apprentice boys, we weren't even Rangers fans, come to think of it. And we eventually approached somebody who was in the Orange Order. We weren't even welcome at their parades. They used to actually send us away from their parades. They didn't like us.
Why?
I can understand partly because I think they thought most of us were right-wing, which most of us were, if I'm honest. And plus we were football hooligans. And that's not a good image. I understand it. But so we're still naive, still learning. I can understand from their point if you didn't put them in a good light. Equally, you'd get some of these people encourage you to attack the other parades, but then disown you. I learnt that quite quickly.
Getting used.
Yeah. So anyway, we approached a fella who was from Northern Ireland, and he was a conduit. He was a link, if you like, to the London UDA. And he said he could give us an introduction to the chap who ran the UDA. Funny, it was a Scots fella. So me and another fella got to meet him. Thoroughly unimpressed, stunk of vodka. And I thought, if you think I'm putting my mates under your control, forget it. That ain't happening for a start. So we arranged to meet him again, and we met him at a location. And during the course of the conversation, we heard a noise outside the door. A bit similar to this situation if you heard a door out there. And funny enough, one of the fellas you just met earlier, he got up and went outside to see what was going on. And there's these two skinheads standing outside the door. And he said, who the fuck are you? Oh, we're Joe's minders. And he said, you ain't much fucking good out there, are you? We could be killing him in here. And we thought, hold on, this is a bit of a fucking two-bob setup. This don't seem right. The bloke we originally met, we said, listen, we're not having anything to do with this fella. We'd rather go our own way rather than listen to him. He's a drunk. Simple as that. my mates had made it clear, Frank, if we're going to fall behind anyone, it's going to be you. And I said, well, I'm not qualified, am I? I don't even know what's what. So we made an agreement to get rid of this fella. And the original bloke we met couldn't wait to be in charge. He couldn't wait. And we said, you know what? Let him have all the grief. We'll give the impression we're just following behind him. So a few things happened over the next few months. We followed him and we went up to Manchester. Coach load of us went up to Manchester. There was an Irish Republican parade up in Manchester, Moston Martyrs it was called. And our left-wing opponents, which at that time was called Red Action, we knew they'd be there. So we thought, great, 2 birds with 1 stone here. We can have it out with Red Action and this parade. And we got stopped just outside Stockport by the police, completely surrounded on this coach. When the police said who was in charge, this fella was overheard to say that I was in charge. And we thought, hold on, what's all that about? So a few weeks later, we had a meeting and we thought, we'll test him now. We'll see exactly how militant he's prepared to be. So a friend of mine came along and he had a catalogue of various weapons. And we knew people from the army. And we basically could have had anything we wanted out of this catalogue. So he puts the catalogue in front of him and said, here, you know, we can have this. Good work, he said, good work. He said, yeah, talk to Frank about it. And that, again, that fellow you met earlier, he went, hold on, you're supposed to be in charge. If we take a dive, you take a dive. We knew he wasn't up. We could see he never had the bottle for it. And a little while after that, we went over, he lived over in Lambeth, South London, and we drove, 5 of us drove over, phoned it, with no mobiles in them days, phoned him up from a phone box, told him we was in a certain pub. He came through the door, 3 of the boys were at a bar, 2 of us were sitting down. He come up and he said, oh, before you say anything, he said, I'm standing down. I said, no, you're fucking not. You're being stood down. Never mind, you know, don't make it sound like it's a voluntary action. No, you know. And in all fairness, he never argued because he looked at the company that was down at the bar, and I don't blame him. And he said, fair enough. And I'm glad because one of the boys had a sawn-off shotgun, and we would have shot him. We would have shot him. Not kill him. It had been done to make a statement to everybody else. Listen, if we're going to cripple him, what do you think we're going to fucking do to the rest of you who don't fall into line? And what do you think we're going to do to the enemy, so to speak? And that sent out a clear message to people all over the country. You know, Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, Coventry, Sheffield, everywhere there was a unit or a brigade. We were the upstarts. We were the Cockney upstarts. And it was, who the fuck are they? They're not Orangemen. They're not Apprentice boys. You know, they're not even Rangers fans. Who are these upstarts? But we made a statement. We said, look, you know, we're not having this. We're not having fucking bombs going off and so on. And that's how it started.
How many people were involved with the London UDA?
Well, I'll explain this bit. The UDA has 2 structures. Well, there's more than 2 structures. I mean, you've got the structure where it's the UDA itself, which at the time was a perfectly political organisation. The military side of it was the Ulster Freedom Fighters. UFF wasn't legal. But it also had the LPA, Loyalist Prisoners Association, which was clearly there to support Loyalist prisoners and their families. So that kind of depended which niche you was in, which you was part of. So you could be sworn into the UDA, if you like. That didn't turn you into a gunman. You know, that didn't necessarily turn you into a militant. You was part of a bigger organisation. So each grouping, if you like, had its own group of people. So clearly the more militant side of it, the Ulster Freedom Fighters, was a very small group of people. Very small group of people. But I'm trying to think of the word. They had the autonomy, if you like, to act how they saw fit. So in regards to actual numbers, that's difficult to say because there was a lot of support as well. And I'm a bit loath to say how many people there were because the authorities, security forces, for a better way of putting it, may think that there was so many. I might be telling you and them that there were more. I don't necessarily want them to know that.
Yeah. So when the conflicts, because they started in the 60s, the conflict with Northern Ireland.
Well, the late 60s. I mean, it's been historically, it's been an ongoing thing, hasn't it?
So what was your purpose then for the London UDA? What was it you were trying to achieve?
I think in simple terms, simplistic terms, was clearly to keep Ulster British. And plus there was an element of, well, you know, you kick me, I'll kick you. You know, and you're blowing up my... I mean, I live in London, you're blowing my city up. I don't take to that too kindly.
So retaliate as well if you was...
Yeah, and I think if the thing is, it's not... I think the bitterest pill to swallow... I can recognise and respect somebody else's cause. If you feel the desire to come and blow my city up, fair enough. As long as you don't mind that if I come face to face with you or any of your supporters or anybody that I perceive to be supporting you, then they're fair game. I think the most bitterest pill to swallow was the amount of English people, left-wing English people, that supported them. Because they were everywhere you were. You know, you could work with them. They'd be in the pub. That's the different. I probably hated them more than the actual than Irish Republicans. It was people that were left-wing people that supported them. I think that was my biggest hatred of all, to be perfectly honest.
What does a loyalist mean to you, Frank?
Well, certainly loyalty. I mean, I don't think it should just be applied to that scenario. I mean, loyalty is the biggest thing to me. There's no doubt about that. Whether it's family life, you know, friends, people you work with to a certain degree, your employer to a certain degree, you have a certain degree of loyalty, you know.
What kind of intelligence then to be involved, especially in London? What kind of intelligence was on yourself, or especially when they started getting involved in like explosives and guns? Was there a lot of intelligence where you were getting... I mean, I lost count of how many times I was followed. I mean, I'd be out on a social occasion with my wife. It got to a stage where she was literally writing down car registration numbers. You know, you knew you was being followed. If you had people coming from Northern Ireland for a weekend, you was definitely followed. Definitely followed. And there was an occasion where I'd come out the front door of my house and there was a Sainsbury's opposite, there was a car park. And it probably wouldn't be so noticeable now, but there were two fellas sitting in a car. And I thought, two fucking blokes going shopping together. When does that ever happen? It just didn't look right. It didn't add up to me. And I thought, that's special. That's got to be special, Brian. And I went to the shop to buy a newspaper. And when I came out, I purposely stood and looked in the window where you've got jobs available and things for sale, so that I could see the reflection. And one of them was on the other side of the road, and I thought, that's definitely them. And I went back to the door, and all of a sudden a fella came up to me and he clearly looked like he was, you know, he was the old Bill. And then suddenly the other one appeared, and he said, can we come in and have a word? And I said, they ain't coming in my house. And they had the car there. We got in the car, and they was military intelligence. They weren't even special branch. It was military intelligence. And they told me chapter and verse of something that had happened. They basically said, we know you're targeting somebody in Manchester who's a Republican who's using the disguise of collecting money for Republican prisoners. We know that you know where he works, where he drinks, his car registration, you know, where he lives, etc., all this information. We know that you've had people watching him. We know that two ex-army fellas are basically going to take this fella out, and your part in this was to supply the guns. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. They told me that I'd been in a pub on a Saturday night. Someone very prominent from Belfast had been over. That I'd gone on the Sunday morning to a friend who had a paper stall, picked up the weapons off of him, drove to the pub. I had keys to the back of the pub, went into a room where two people were sleeping, opened the door, put the bat, everything. I couldn't believe it. And bit of bravado on my part. I mean, well, nick me then, go on in, nick me, arrest me. And I thought, you ain't going to do that,
Because if you was going to do it, I wouldn't be sitting in the back of this car, would I? I'd be sitting in the police station. And they were quite open and said, listen, we'll give you enough rope and you'll hang yourself. Well, clearly that happened, didn't it?
It did, yeah,
eventually, it happened. But that should have been the warning. That should have been, well, if they know that much, in that much detail, and I'm probably leaving bits out, you know, for the sake of time, but if they know that much, that was the point. That's the point I should have said, fuck this.
Yeah. Were you ready to kill and be killed for your beliefs, Frank?
I look at it this way: it took me a while. It took me a while to dawn on me what life was like, whichever side you was on. The pressure that people were under, you know, and I've got no doubt in my mind, if I'd have lived in Belfast, I'd have landed up dead or doing life. And I'm quite open about this. I'm glad I got caught. I am seriously glad I got caught. Because, excuse me, when I first got arrested, I was on Cat A, you know, and in Winston Green in Birmingham. And my first visit with my wife was behind a screen. So my daughters were sitting there. You can't hold their hand. You can't comfort them. They're crying their eyes out. You're like a raging lunatic. You can't. And what I didn't know at the time was a screw on the way into the prison had stopped my wife and her sister and asked who's Portinari's wife. And my wife assumed he was going to be helpful. And he had a short sleeve white shirt on, you know, prison shirt, and he had a big shamrock on his arm. And he turned and blatantly said to her, "You want to hope he doesn't get bail, because if he does, he's going to get shot in the head." Now, this man's wearing a uniform with a crown. He's supposed to be there to look after prisoners, not threaten their wives. Well, she never told me this. Thankfully, she told me this afterwards. Anyway, after so many, probably a couple of months, I finally got an open visit with her, and it is like this. It is literally this, and two screws sitting there. It's like being in a soap opera. You feel like you're performing for them almost. Excuse me. And I said to my wife, I said, I'm glad I've been caught. And she said, what do you mean? How can you want to get caught? And I said to her, babe, where did you think this was going to end? I said, you cannot be in charge and you cannot have guns wrapped around you and not use them. And of course, I knew what was coming. She said, are you telling me you'd have shot someone? I went, well, and that's difficult because you're the husband of, you're her husband and the father of her kids. But I'm not sure what she thought.
Yeah, it's looking for me, Frank, as you probably know, watching politics, I don't really give a fuck about. It's for me, I'm not interested whether who's left wing or right wing. Yeah. For me, I see human beings as humans, but I understand. I've had Johnny Adair on, and he says that if he grew up a mile down the road, he'd be fighting for another cause. But for looking out, did you ever feel pressured that it was going too far that you couldn't get out? No. It was a commitment. I'd made a commitment. Excuse me, I took an oath. I took an oath. I took it quite serious. And the trouble is, for want of a better way of putting it, your targets becomes wider, because now it's like, well, who's eligible for this? Is it might start off where you'd say, well, anyone that supplies weapons to them, anyone that supplies information to them. Then it becomes anyone that supports their paper, sells their papers outside train stations, anyone that goes on their parades. You become less discerning about who you want to do harm to. And, there was a time when we met someone who was trying to, we think he was trying to sell us hand grenades. And we actually had an army friend go along and verify that they were legitimate hand grenades. Because you can only try one once, can't you? You can't use it again, can you? So we wanted to know that if you buy a crate of them, they're all going to work within reason. And he discussed the timing, the pins on them. We had someone that identified an old quarry that we could go and test. And this bloke didn't want to do that. And we thought, hold on, mate, it's a lot of money involved here. Why would you not want to? And not long after that,
a friend of ours realised he was being followed. And all of a sudden, this bloke, oh yeah, take as many as you want and try them. And we thought, hold on. Years later, when I was pulled by, on a different occasion when I was pulled by military intelligence, the subject of grenades come up. So we done right to walk away from that.
Was that a setup?
I think that was. Now, let's say we got one box of these hand grenades. What the fuck would we have done with them? What havoc would we have... I make no bones about it.
So much blood.
I'd have fucking... Listen, the Camden Irish Centre, Kilburn, these Irish centres had had, fundraisers and all. Do you think at that time I'd have had any qualms about walking in there and throwing a grenade in it? I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have thought... it's a horrible thing to say now. I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But that was the height of that commitment, that I'm in charge here. I've got to show that that you can't criticise. We used to go around the country, go to certain social clubs, Rangers clubs, etc., and call these people out. Hold on, you're Orangemen, you're apprentice boys, you call yourself the UDA. What the fuck are you doing? You're supposed to be a paramilitary organisation. What are you doing? Oh, well, we're supplying guns to the boys. Oh, so you're not going to use them then. You're going to give them to somebody else to use. And then when they get caught or when they get, they get killed, what are you going to do? Write a song about them? Sing about them? Why aren't you doing it? And that's how we, for want of a better way of putting it, that's how we came to the fore. That's how we came to the top. So, for example, I went to a club one day, me and a mate, walked in and called these people out. We said, you're fucking frauds. You're standing in the bar giving it all the big un. Got your badges on,
Tattoos.
Yeah. Well, of course, when we went to get in the car, they weren't happy, was they? So they all come out mob-handed. Well, one of us pulled a fucking, 9mm brand automatic out of their overcoat and went, well, keep coming. That's when people started to learn, hold on, these ain't fucking about. These boys ain't fucking about.
Not just all talk.
And I've got to say, at that time, there were no limits. There was no limits, James. And I look at me now, and people say to me now, funny enough, we had a conversation with someone a couple of weeks ago, talking about doing these talks, whether those talks or whether it's for schools, colleges, universities, or even corporate audiences. And someone said, oh, yes, you could go into schools and you could talk about, gangs and gun crime and prison experiences. Oh, and come to think of it, to a certain degree, you yourself was radicalised. I laughed. I fucking burst out laughing. I said, are you kidding me? I said, who's going to believe that I was ever radicalised? If anything, I'm the one that done the radicalising. Mm-hmm. I put my hands up to that. I was. Yeah. And I've probably influenced a lot of my friends, mates, who stuck by me out of loyalty to me. Treating around of them stuck with me for the cause. I would say the majority of them stuck by me. So in that sense, I've radicalised people.
Yeah, so you weren't influenced in a way, you knew exactly what you were doing and you put your hands up and admit it?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Do a lot of people join the cause because they don't really care what the fuck's going on, they just want to fight? Is there certain people like that? I can imagine some smart ass, sociologist writing a book and go, oh, it's clear to me. Frank went to football fighting. Couldn't get enough fighting at the football. Oh no, I'll join the right wing. We'll have fights at meetings and demonstrations and, marches. Oh, fuck me, that's not enough for him. He wants to join the Loyalist paramilitaries now, have a bit more violence. I can imagine that. But that's not the truth. Yeah.
That's not the truth. It wasn't a want for violence. Yeah. It wasn't a mad bloodlust.
Did you ever have any hits out in your life as well, Frank? Did anybody ever try and take a pot shot at you?
Well, the irony is it was an internal thing. It was an internal thing. I can look back on it now and realise me and another fellow were set up against each other. A fellow from Liverpool who I had a lot of time for, and he was ex-army, a lot of respect for him. But one day out of the blue, he turned up at my door, and I looked out the curtain and he was standing. I thought, fuck, it'd been a little bit of a dispute, and he wasn't the sort of fella that you'd muck about with. So it was a mutual respect. And I had two doors, and I opened the first door, went to the front door, And as I got to the door, he put his hand inside his coat. And I thought, fuck this, he's capable. You know, don't muck about here. Slammed the front door, slammed the second inner door. And I went to dive on the floor. And I thought, no. He'll know to shoot down. He'll shoot through the door downwards. So I went up against the wall. I had me back up against the wall, trying to make my way along to get into the nearest door. And I heard a smash. And what it was, I lived in a big Georgian house at the time, and it was a basement and I had a bar. And I went into the room, and there was a window had been put, one of the small panes had been put through, and there was a wooden mallet on the floor. And I thought, are you fucking kidding me? You've come 200 miles to do me with a fucking wooden mallet. I felt insulted. I'd rather he shot me. And more to the point, I thought, well, how does that work out? When I come to the front door and I opened the door, surely you should have hit me over the head with a mallet and then told me what was what. So my respect went even further down. Anyway, he's gone off. I'm absolutely fuming now. I've got in my car, gone round to a mate. We've picked something up. I said, I'm going to fucking shoot him. I'm not having this. I've got to do him now. I've got to let the whole organisation know, don't fuck about with us, you know. And I knew the shortcuts back to the M1 because I was convinced he'd come in his car. Got in the car, drove up, can't find him. He'd got the train. He'd got the train from Liverpool to Euston. I assumed he'd come in his car. So the next few weeks was one of me going up to Liverpool, Manchester, Sheffield, different places, meeting up with people and saying, listen, I don't know where he is, but I want to see him. If he's in the right and I'm in the wrong, let's make a meet in Belfast. Tell him my name a day, I'll get on a plane, I'll meet him over there, we'll see who's right, who's wrong. He disappeared off the scene. Now, subsequently, I found out that there was somebody else who was very high up in that organisation, our organisation, and he was working for the state. And he knew how volatile I was, and he knew how volatile the other fellow, and he basically set us against each other. Mm. And that happened on numerous occasions. That actually happened on quite a few occasions. Was it hard to trust as well at some states, Frank? Because obviously people getting set up, and even informants as well. If I go to your area, say I go to an area, you know, there were different brigades in different parts of Belfast, right? And it was an inner council. And it was funny, that was a bigger table than this, but similar. So if you're in charge of hundreds of men, I assume your men trust you. That's why they've voted you to be in your position. And you have the power of life and death. When you sit around that table, you've got the power of life and death. You can have somebody killed. And that's not necessarily the enemy. That's someone within your own circle. So it's a very, powerful position. Mm-hmm. So you assume, well, if this fella's in charge of 200-300 people, he must be respected. He must be trusted. But what you've not taken into account is he's working for the state. He's working for special branch. He's working for the RUC, or he's working for the army, or he's working for millions. That doesn't dawn on you until the first time you experience it. Mm-hmm. And then you think, hold on, how the fuck does that work? And then you start working things out. Now, there was a case where somebody was killed in a pub, and they were a loyalist, alleged loyalist. They were thought to have been responsible providing the IRA with information for the murder of a car bomb of a very prominent loyalist, John McMichael, very respected man on a militant level and on a political level, very respected man. And it was identified that it was this fella who was working in tandem with the IRA to carve up the building sites, taxing the workers and who can work here and who can work. Anyway, he was lured to a pub and he was killed. On that night, 2 prominent commanders were sitting in my house in Kentish Town having dinner. I didn't know this. I didn't know. I was their alibi. Because there was an agreement that the top IRA people would say to the top UDA people, you don't touch for us and we won't touch for you. Well, that now the golden rule's just been broke, isn't it? So these 2 needed an alibi. Well, he wasn't in Belfast. He was in London. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know that. So you think, hold on, so you sit in my house eating dinner that my wife has prepared, and you haven't even got the decency to tell me that you're basically using me as an alibi for you. So you learn quickly, don't you? You learn quickly. So then what you do is you go along with it. You make out you're naive. You make out I'm the silly fucking cockney, mate. I don't know what's going on, mate. But then I didn't stop learning. I didn't stop watching people. I didn't stop questioning every single thing that went on.
How does that affect you now, Frank, mentally, with like trust issues or any paranoia?
No, not at all. No, not at all. No, not at all. I'm pretty good at establishing who's sincere, who's genuine, who's loyal in whatever walk of life, not politics, just in general walk of life.
What about the people back home but people in Belfast? What kind of people you connected to there? We spoke earlier, this guy, Michael Stone. Did you know him? Yeah,
I knew Michael to talk to. Yeah, I got a lot of time with Michael. When Michael did what he did in the cemetery, I think that I was disgusted, not with what he'd done. I was disgusted because a lot of people deserted him. They shied away from him. They said it basically hadn't been okayed, for want of a better way of putting it, because politics was going on, talks were going on. It upset upset the apple cart. And some people were trying to move away from that militant position. I get that. But he suddenly became the sacrificial lamb. But also a lot of people knew that once he'd done that, there was going to be a big comeback, a massive comeback. So if you was one of the top boys, for want of a better way of putting it, you must have been laying in your bed every night thinking, fuck this. The Provy's coming through the door tonight, tomorrow night. Next time I get in my car, is it going to blow up? A lot of people deserted him.
So was he told to do that? Was that?
Well, he must have got the weapons from somewhere, mustn't he? Mm-hmm. There must have been a degree of planning involved. And there must have been people that knew. But all of a sudden people disowned, and I didn't agree with that. And I certainly didn't disown him, that's for sure. And there was a period where I was alienated, but it didn't go down well. But I met him when he came out. After his first sentence. I've been to the maze plenty of times to visit people, and the old Crumlin Road for that matter as well. That's long gone now.
So if somebody's standing with a gun, whether it's Irish Republican or somebody for the UDA and they're fighting, then you sit back. But because there's a lot of innocent people get killed in the crossfire as well, both sides. How do you look at it that way then and think maybe that shouldn't have happened, or do you just think I'm from this side and I don't care who gets killed from the other side?
I'll tell you what's too easy, right? I was clearly caught with weapons, all right? What about the weapons I didn't get caught with? What happened to those weapons? What scenarios were those weapons used? It's easy for me to sit here and convince myself, well, those guns were for shooting IRA men. I don't give a fuck. Let's hope that's what they was used for. If the police came to me today and said to me, we've identified through modern forensics that one of the weapons that you supplied was to shoot an innocent Catholic who had 5 kids. His wife had a nervous breakdown. His mother died 6 weeks later. I'm not going to feel good about myself, am I? It's not the same, is it? You think you're fighting a war, don't you? You think I'm only hurting the enemy. You don't think of the impact. So I find it difficult to answer because that's not happened. That's not happened, has it? So I can be quite blasé about it. I can think, well, my conscience is clear. I'm not giving anyone any apologies. Mm-hmm. But I've not done that, have I? What if the scenario was, I've not consciously taken someone's life. God knows how I'd feel if I did. And I think that's the difficult one. I'd be intrigued to be sitting across the table with somebody that has and ask them. I mean, I've seen interviews, obviously. But I'd be intrigued how they sleep at night. Because I don't think they were born bad people. I think they were thrown into situations. I mean, there's one, I think he was called, I can't think of the fella's name there, but there was a documentary and he was in prison Billy somebody.
Billy Moore?
No, Billy, I can't think of his name. And he was a young man, churchgoer, good family. He was a UVF volunteer, and felt he had to defend his community, and went out, killed somebody. He couldn't live with it, and eventually he did kill himself.
Yeah.
He did kill himself. So it's okay putting yourself in that position. I mean, look, I make no bones about it. I'm going to leave here, all right? I'm going to go in a pub. People are going to shake my hand. People are going to buy me a drink. People are going to have a photo done with me. It means fuck all to me. It means nothing. It means absolutely... I know why they do it, but I'm past it. I'm past all that. Because the only people I actually landed up hurting was my own family. The only people I left vulnerable was my own family. Because they had to still live where I live. You know, you miss your kids' birthdays, Christmas, when they go from one school to the next school. The only people you've actually landed up hurting is the people you care about the most.
Did they know how deep you were involved, Frank, your family?
I think my wife did to a certain degree. You can't win, can you? If you're a wife, if I say I'm going to Glasgow this week, or I'm going to Belfast this week, or wherever I'm going, and my wife said to my mother, I don't know, he's off again. Like, oh, well, Lise, he's his own man. You know, he's his own man. You should let him do what he wants to do. Well, of course, when I got captured, my mum turned on my wife and said, oh, you should have kept an eye on him. You know, you should have kept him indoors more. She blamed me. She blamed my wife. All right, she apologised eventually. But, yeah, I mean, my wife met people. She did meet people. There was an occasion one Sunday morning, and it was on the radio, and my wife burst into tears. And I said, what's the matter? She went, your mate's just been killed in Londonderry. Well, she'd met his wife. So it became personal.
Yeah, it fucks everyone up.
You know, it does. And you've got to look at it and say, hold on, look, regret. I mean, I remember when you asked Johnny, you know, and he you know, do you have any regrets? You know, what would you say? And so on. And I agreed with his response. For him to turn around and say, I was wrong, well then every fella that he ever led, influenced, told to go to do something, is he telling them they're wrong as well? That's difficult. That's difficult to say, I'm wrong and therefore you're wrong. You're all wrong. Well, I'm not prepared to do that.
Yeah,
I might say I was wrong to lead you down that path, but you're still your own people to a certain degree. But it's difficult. It is difficult.
Because if you say you're wrong, you might see it differently now, but if you say that, then everything you ever fought for from both sides, then it just goes to fuck, basically.
Well, exactly. So if you come out... Listen, when I come out of prison, it was really difficult because there was talks about the peace process, there was talks about decommissioning, blah, blah, blah. For want of a better way of putting it, my war weren't over. It wasn't over. So, excuse me. So when I came out, I'm still. I've got things in my head, you know, and I found it really difficult because I'm then going to talk to people who are saying, "Oh, Frank, we're having talks about this, and we're doing talks about it. How do you feel about the peace process?" Blah 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 blah. I was still going to areas in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, particularly, but also Londonderry. There weren't no peace. I'm being told on the television and the radio that there's peace. Well, not the areas I was going to, there weren't peace.
Was that after the Good Friday Agreement?
Yeah, there were still petrol bombs being thrown, there were still communities being terrorised, there were still communities that couldn't walk to the end of the road to go and get a loaf of bread. So I thought, well, that's not what I'm seeing. That's not... And that fed my militancy again, didn't it? There's my excuse again, isn't it? I've got to protect these people. Now, who is protecting these people? The RUC's not doing it. The Army's not doing it. Our own British government's not doing it. You've got to empower these people now to look after themselves.
Was that in your mind, though, Frank, that you didn't want to give it up either because you've been so
Probably.
involved in it?
Probably.
With all the shit, explosives, guns, murders, crime.
Probably.
You didn't realise that, okay, this is over. What the fuck am I going to do?
Yeah, and there's a phrase for it, you know, or there's a word for it. You know, you would be described as a dinosaur. You know, you're living in the past. But by the same token, you're only going by what you see and what you're experiencing. Listen, we went over one weekend, there was about 30 of us, and we went to a place called Whitewell, or White City, and we met a group of women, and we sat in a community centre, and they discussed how difficult it was to go from their community to go and get basic essentials and so on. And a woman described how she had to distinguish between whether it was a brick that was landed, she lived in like a chalet type building, whether it was a brick that was hitting her roof or whether it was a petrol bomb. Suddenly, someone realised this woman was blind. Now, if it's not scary enough when you got your sight, well, I'm telling you, there was grown men making excuses to go to the toilet. They had tears in their eyes. Now, when men do that, when men let their emotions show, they don't like you, do they? So what do? You go to the other extreme. I can't be seen to be like this. I can't. You put your tough head on there, didn't you? You think, I've got to be a man now. I've got to fucking come back. We've got to support this woman. And it was trying to do it that, how can we practically help this woman? Not by going down the road and shooting someone. That's not going to solve the problem, is it? So it did come about, common sense did prevail. And when we realised that they couldn't go to the end of their road and get basic bread and milk, what we did was we had a function back in London and we paid for a container lorry, a container, not the lorry, just the container, and it got turned into a shop so that they could have the basic amenities on their own estate. So my brain started to go, hold on, there's another way of helping these people. You don't have to go down a road and fucking shoot somebody or blow something up. Let's concentrate on helping these people and empowering them and getting them to form their own community support group. And that's the way I went. And I did. I got more involved in community politics.
Do you think the troubles that happened 70s, 80s, 90s, do you think they'll ever go back to Ireland, Northern Ireland, where the conflict will start again?
I think people haven't got the taste for it. If you meet a 25-year-old now, full of bravado, probably got a UDA, UVF T-shirt on, tattoos, got a badge, you think, fuck off, mate, I've been out of prison 25 years this year. Mm-hmm. You have not got a clue. You have not got a clue to know what it's like to go and visit. You get on I don't care how hard you are, you get on a prison bus with women and kids, and the mums are fussing over the kids. Come on, son, you've got to look your best, and and they're acting like they're strong, these women, and they are strong women. I've got more respect for some of the women than the blokes.
Yeah.
You see them when they come out after they visited their dad, them kids. If you sit there and you tell me you have not got a tear in your eye, you ain't human. You're not human. They've been to see their dad. The woman's tried to look her best. She's done her hair up. She's got her nice clothes on. And then they come back, they get dropped up, and fucking reality drops in, doesn't it? They ain't going to see their dad again for another 2 weeks.
See, when you got your big sentence, Frank, for the guns, what was your head like then? What were you going through? My first thought was guilt that I'd left my family vulnerable. That was it, more than anything else. It had nothing to do with the sentence, what I might get, the conditions, the Cat A conditions, which were absolute fucking prehistoric, medieval. It was terrible. It was I'm not going to dress it up. I'm not going to come across the yard man and go, I'm all right. I got through it. I was okay. No, I'm telling you, you live like a fucking dog, and. But at the end of the day, it was the family. It was not the regret of what I'd done. I mean, I was looking at a 10 to 14 year sentence. That's what I was told, 10 to 14 years, right? And when I could finally make a phone call and take into account the phone's on the wall, but sitting round the corner there's a bloke watching a tape going round and he's got the earphones on. You say anything out of place, you're cut off. You won't be able to phone that person again. First time I got to speak to my wife before I even got to have a visit, and I said to her, listen, babe, I'm looking at 10 to 14 years here. I don't expect you to be hanging about. And I didn't mean it, obviously. Just to see her reaction.
I was waiting for her to say, see you later. Yeah, it's all right, I found out where your insurance books are, and I sold the car. Yeah. No. And this, at the end of it, this screw came running out, and he went, what the fuck are you doing? And I said, what do you mean, mate? He said, there's a woman there that clearly loves you and you're basically telling her to fuck off. I went, no. He said, listen, how many times do you think I've heard this conversation? And I appreciated what he said. But I was looking at 10 to 14, and when it come down to it, if I'd have got 8 in my brain, I thought, oh, you know, if I got on my mind, if I got 8, I'll take that on the chin, you know, 4, get out. One codeine walked after about 5.5 weeks because they couldn't prove what was in the bag. And I said to him, if you keep saying you don't know what's in that bag, they can't prove you did. So he walked. The other fella from Belfast, well, he was a different kettle of fish. He could have got off. If he'd have carried on not guilty, he didn't know what was in the bag, I can't see how they could have proved he knew it was in the bag. The only difference was he got caught with the bag. So on the day of going up for sentence, I'd gone guilty. Listen, I couldn't wait to go guilty.
Did you take the deal?
I couldn't wait to go guilty because I was more worried about, what else are they going to come up with? What other charges are they going to come up with? Let's just get this out of the way. So he was meant to go not guilty. On the day, they convinced him to change the plea. But I didn't know this till afterwards how much they'd done the deal for. So when we go up, it's straightforward sentencing. It's not a trial. And the prosecution basically made it clear, there was law students and the press were there, made it clear that I was the bad boy. I was the instigator. And he said, the judge said, you're looking down both barrels of a double-figured sentence. I thought, fuck that, that's 10 to start off with. That's the 8 gone out the window. You know, and anyway, he calls him up, he shouts his name out, and he basically said to him, I'll sentence you to 5 years. And I thought, fuck me, we've done 9 months on remand. That counts as 18 months. He's only got 6 months to do. Then the court went really quiet. I thought, oh, fuck. And he said, I sentence you to 5 years. So I just stood there. And one of the screws went to pull my arm, as it would say, come on, what, you know. I went, what are you fucking doing? He means give you 5 years. I went, and a fucking rest. But the judge got up. My mates were in the dock, they put their thumb up like this, and, you know. I thought, 5 years? You're kidding me. When I go downstairs, I pass his barrister, the other fella's barrister. And he said to me, you are a very lucky man. I said, how the fuck do you work that out? I've still got to keep it going, haven't I went, how'd you work that out, mate? So I'm going to fucking prison for 5 years. He went, you know what I mean. So I knew he'd told him everything, right? Go into a room, it's my barrister and his junior. Both got a bit of paper each. One turns his bit of paper over, got 10 written on it. One's got 12. So I said, well, how the fuck have I got 5? What it boiled down to is, and this is why the judge said certain things to the law students. He cannot give you a disproportionate sentence. So if he's giving him 2.5, he's giving me twice as much as him, isn't he? So I could appeal that. If he'd give me any more than that, my people could have gone and appealed and said, hold on, that's a disproportionate sentence. I didn't know that at the time. I'm not a legal person. But that's what the barrister explained to me.
Because you were in with Charlie Bronson?
Yeah, Charlie. Yeah,
what was Charlie like?
I loved him, absolutely loved him. Which is easy to say because some people say that and they never even met the man. I get that. But he was the first prisoner that I met. We was on a cat yard and he was the first one I met. I came down on the yard and, you know, he introduced himself and he was wearing a bib and brace and hobnail boots. And
is he a big guy? Is he strong?
He's not particularly tall, but he's very fit. He was very. You could see that. I mean, he was marching round a thing, and he used to have a medicine ball, you know, in his cell. And he made me feel welcome. That was the main thing. He made me feel welcome.
What was your night like? Because I know you gave me something here. He says your first night in, the awkward first evening in the working wing. What was that?
Oh, damn, yeah. We'd been banged up for 9 months. So once you get convicted, you go over onto the working wing. So you're now amongst the main population of the prison. And if you're a Cockney, you don't know that's going to go down, do you? You're in Birmingham, you know what I mean? So past football things, you're thinking, hold on, what's the fucking odds of bumping into someone who you've had it at, you know, when you've played West Brom or Birmingham or Villa or whatever. Anyway, so we're in a cell, 6 o'clock comes. and we've got association. Well, we weren't getting association for the first 6 months on Cat A. So he says to me, Mark O.D., what are you doing? You're going out on association? And I said, fucking too right I am, after being banged up all them months. Come out, walk down these stairs. 30 people sitting there watching the television. News comes on. We're coming down the stairs. 2 men have been convicted today, blah, 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 connection with whatever. This bloke turns round, looks up. We're coming down the stairs. He looks up, doesn't he? Looks back at the telly. I thought, fucking great. So as we're coming down the steps, I thought, we've got to get this out of the way, haven't we? So I get to the bottom of the stairs, I go, all right, fellas. I said, my name's Frank, this is Jim. I said, you just seen us on the telly? Anyone got a problem with that? This fucking black geezer stood up. Like a monster. He got bigger. You know when someone gets fucking bigger? And I thought, you fucking big mouth. You fucking big mouth. And all of a sudden he went, thank fuck for that. He went, another cockney. I'm sick of all these brummy cunts. I thought, what a touch. What an absolute touch. And he introduced me to his mate. They got down for a shed load of a warehouse full of puff. Don't worry, son. He said, I'll get you down to the gym and all that. Anytime you want to go down to the gym. Oh, fucking, that could have gone wrong. That could have gone wrong.
What was the thing you says, I wouldn't have associated with a nonce, he was a rapist? What was that? Yeah,
when we was on the Cat A wing, I'll explain the Cat A wing. What they did was they had 16 cells, and only 8 cells were ever used at one time, and you didn't know when it was going to happen. It could be a day, a week. They used to move you from one cell to the other. And the idea was to stop you escaping, making plans. That's why you was on Cat A. Cat A is basically, if you know people who've got the means or the influence to be part of a conspiracy to free you, that's why you're Cat A. Is to stop that. And so the idea was they moved you about so many days, so you couldn't plan. So you couldn't say to someone, "Oh, listen, I'm in this cell or whatever." So they used to move you about. And the first 6 months we had no association at all, none at all. You couldn't. Any time you met someone else was on the yard, and that would only be 2 or 3 at a time, 4 maybe. You didn't have no church, no canteen, no gym. Your food was brought to your door. You might be lucky to have 1 shower a week. And all of a sudden, the law changed, and we now got told we was going to have association. We were told 4 people would come out. They put a pool table on the wing. 4 would come out in the afternoon, 4 would come out in the evening. So I come out in the afternoon. One of my co-Ds has already gone home now. Walk out, there's a black fella standing near the pool table talking to the screws. And I thought, oh, he's not even Cat A. He wasn't even a Cat A prisoner. And I thought, what the fuck? I've realised he's a fella who some of the other inmates on the working wing was talking about. He was into rape. So I've come out, he's standing there, and I said to the other fellas, get back behind your door. I went, what? I went, get back behind your fucking door. I said, I ain't doing my association with a fucking dirty rapist. Went back in, 5-10 minutes later, all the heavy mobs turned up, the black boiler suits and all that come in, fucking knocking me about. Took me to I'm not sure it was the governor or the wing governor, and they said, he said something like, I won't have you telling my staff what they can and cannot do. I said, hold on, I've not told your staff what they can and cannot do. I told them what I'm not going to do. I'm not having my association with a fucking dirty rapist. Anyway, they let me off that. I didn't get any injunctions or anything like that. And eventually he was moved. He should have been... Well, he was cleaning the wing. And they just happened to leave him down there on that occasion. But...
why did they call you Frank the Baptist in the jail?
Well, when I moved to... Eventually got sentenced and I got moved to Swaleside, which is on the Isle of Sheppey. This is one of these scenarios where I didn't want to mention it in the book. I didn't really want to mention it because I know my wife's going to read the book, isn't she? You don't want your wife to know everything about you, all the dark, the dark side. And what happened was when I got there, I don't smoke. So you're allowed to have 2.5 ounces of old Ireland tobacco. So that's 5 packs of these of this tobacco. So the plan is if you cut it in half, you take the end off and you seal it back up again and you sell it. So half ounce, you get an ounce back. No one wants to do that because one, they want to smoke their own cigarettes, and a lot of them want to have a bit of puff for the evening. That's their last thing of the evening. They want to have a bit of puff, settle them down for the night. So there was me with this. So I'd say, well, pay me back with phone cards or cash. Cash used to mean that they passed the cash out to pay for the drugs that were coming in. So if you had these three things, well, four, because you had phone cards, which if you had, say for example, they were £2 each a phone card. If you had 7 phone cards, that's only £14 worth. But you get a £20 note for them phone cards because the phone cards are important. The phone out to get your drugs in on a visit. Everything was important, whether it's the tobacco, phone cards, or the cash. And I had plenty of it. I was buying stereos up with people. The skagheads used to come in. They told their mum or their girlfriend, I've got to have a music system. It was a lot of money. People would give them a tenner. And I'd think, fuck, I'll give them 30. But then somebody would come in who didn't have a music centre, I'd set it to them for 60 or however much, you know. It's a long, I'm going back a while, it's hard to remember.
So you were hustling in those days as well?
And it was trainers, budgie cages.
Jewellery?
Everything, jewellery, yeah. Well, do you know what? This is the first time I've not had the chain. I broke it the other week, the chain. I've had it all 20 odd years I've had this chain. And I actually I caught it on a towel the other week when I got out the shower. And so you became vital on the wing. People would come to you for what they needed. And in all fairness of screws, a lot of the screws knew what I was doing. The stipulation was no drugs. As long as you don't do drugs, Frank, we kind of let you get on with what you're doing. So fine. So on this particular occasion, 10 to 8, 5 to 8, about to bang up, these 2 black fellas come, but they come to rob me, you know. They're going to rob me. I've just been to get a jug of boiling hot water out the urn. Most people do that. You have your cup of tea of an evening, you know, and coffee, whatever. So there's no intent here. You know, there's no planning of this. They've come to the door, you know, gone to push through the fucking... I've got the thing in my hand, my natural instinct was, you ain't... I mean, I'm assuming they got knives on them. You know, because I'm not going to hand it over, am I? So I'm assuming they must be tooled up. So I've just launched it at them. Just launched this fucking water over them. They've run off fucking screaming. And, you know, people will tell you about putting sugar in it and it's like napalm, it sticks. Yeah. That's not what I was doing. This was just instinct. This was, they're going to hurt me, they're going to rob me. I threw the water. Screws come up. What's happened, Frank? What's that? I've got a little drop left in it. I said, fuck me, Gav. I said, they bumped into me, tripped up. I said, I've only... He laughed, didn't he? It's to say, you expect me to believe that? Well, of course, that started the reputation because I thought, you know what? You can't get nicked for having hot water. You can't get nicked for having water. You can get nicked if you throw over someone and burn them, but possession of water is not an offence. So all these people going around making, you know, tools and, you know, carrying knives, which they can get nicked for, I thought, I don't need that, do I? Once people know that if you come near me, I'm going to throw a jug of hot water over you, you're going to leave me alone, aren't you? And that's how it started. And one day, I used to go to church with an old black boy, and we was coming back one day, and he went to me, Frankie, he said, you'll carry on like this. He said, they're going to call you Frank the Baptist. And that's how it started. And that's how it started. You know?
How were you feeling to write the book, Frank? How was that for you to put a lot of stuff into this book that maybe that you didn't want people to see or...
Yeah, because you're stripping yourself back, isn't you?
You're vulnerable in that, aren't you?
You're stripping yourself back, and you're telling people, and as I say, some people will respect you for it, and other people will go, "Are you sure what you're doing that for?" Other people are going to hate you, which I understand. I get that, but as I say, mates had said to me, you know, if you don't do it, Frank, all our history, and it is a bit of social and political history. It tells a story of where I grew up, what it was like, my personal relationships with people, how I got to where I got to for good or bad.
You talk about media conspiracies in that as well. What kind of conspiracies?
Well, clearly the media. When you go on the internet, right, and you suddenly come across your name, and you think, and all of a sudden it's got, what's his name? He does cookery. This fella, Jay. He's a journalist, but he's Rayner. Jay Rayner. Now his mum is obviously famous, Claire Rayner. Right. So all of a sudden you see your name associated with Jay Rayner, and you think, how the fuck's that come about? He's written a book. He's mentioned me in his book because when he was doing some sort of journalism, he met someone, there was an investigation going on, and my name came up. And this is what happens. Your name suddenly, and you become part of these stories, and you think, hold on, that never happened. And I've been mentioned in books. There's the history of the UDA, right? Is written by a fella called Emery MacDonald and a fella called Jim Cusack, right? Journalist. They got the sentence wrong. They got my name wrong. They called me James, ironically.
Good name.
Right? And you could be my co-conspirator if you're not careful.
Off, right.
I got my ideas from James.
So where did I?
And they said I'd previously had a conviction for drugs. Where the fuck they get that from? Mm. So the trouble is, once it goes into print, other people use it as a reference point.
Yeah, it's there forever.
So they'll quote that. Mm-hmm. So if they write a book or an article, they will quote that I've got a conviction for drugs.
Drug dealer.
They won't go and ask me. They won't check with the authorities to see if that's real. No, they'll just, it just gets regurgitated. Yeah. And you very quickly learn. Now, there was a 4-page article in the Mail on Sunday magazine, all about me. They've got pictures of the guns, right? 7 guns on the floor of the car park. Where did they get that from? They got a picture of me in a white cat paper suit. Where did they get that from? They got a picture of my house where they took a rifle and put it on the floor of the bar in my house and said that was my office where I work. You've got no comeback, have you? Mm-hmm. You've got no right to apply because you're banged up. You've got nothing. They made a program. They done a reenactment of the arrest. You've got no right of appeal. You've got nothing. You can't say nothing.
Yeah.
So everyone that looks at it just says, "Oh, that must be the truth."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mud sticks.
That must be the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why I wrote in the book. Mm-hmm. That's what. And it turned out.
Is that to get your own story out, the truth, and a lot of things?
So a journalist. So friends of mine got in touch with a journalist and basically said, "We put it to you that you've written the version that Special Branch want in return for you to get the exclusive photos." And the bloke admitted it. He said, "Yeah." Mm-hmm. So the idea was to alienate me. It's to make my friends, associates, go, keep away from him. But it didn't work. Mm-hmm. It didn't work. In fact, if anything, it blew up in their face. Mm-hmm. And that's what I explained in the book.
So going forward for the future, Frank, I know you're trying to do talks and stuff now, tell your story even more. What do you see yourself doing then?
Yeah, very much that. Very much that. I said it, I wasted my education years ago, good reason, because I wanted to go out and look after myself and my family. And I've had small incidents where I've had opportunities in prison. I took courses in British Institute of Cleaning Science. I took an assessor's course. I can train people. I did go into that world up when I came out. I did get part of a partnership with a fella in a cleaning company. He wasn't as dedicated to me as unfortunately. I was offered money when I came out by a Special Branch, more than one occasion, to set up my own business. There was also a time when they actually came round the house and offered me money to work for them and buy weapons, as long as the weapons didn't get into the hands of people who might use them, because then that's made people look at me and go, "Oh, Frank's back on the scene. Frank's back at the top. Look, he's buying guns. He's still, They soon got told to fucking go. That was simple as that. Get rid of them. So I've not used my opportunities. I've not used the best of the teachers that I've had in life. In the last 18 months, I've met some good teachers, and I'm listening to them very much. I listen to your podcasts. I listen to the things you say. I listen to the people that your guests say. I listen to what Sean does. I've made a very good friend with someone who's very influential in the speaking world. He's acting as my mentor. He's introduced me to a group of people who are either professional speakers or trying to become professional speakers. So I'm just going to explore now, looking at going into schools, colleges, universities, basically, trying to deter people from getting into a similar situation, or at least putting themselves in a position to make their choices. Yeah. Think it through before they do it.
Which is a good thing, Frank, to try and make better changes.
And I believe I've got enough experience, prison life, obviously. Whatever people's perception. I know it's changed now. The conditions now would not have been as bad as 1993. I appreciate that. But equally, there's a market for corporate speaking as well, and it's all about getting your scripts right to fit those various scenarios, and that's what I'm currently working on. I'm currently working on preparing those scripts so that they can be delivered to whichever audience I find myself in, and I've started writing the second book to finish the story off.
When's this coming out?
I'd like to think by the end of this year. I'd be disappointed if I didn't do it. For want of a better way of putting it, and it's not for financial reasons, the Christmas market, if you like. Sean's helping me with that. Sean rebranded the old book via his own publishing company. He's been very helpful with that. I appreciate that. The book's worked out well. I sent that book out to 4 different people. All 4 people have been very helpful, including yourself. So that's just 4 books. 4 people I've had positive responses with. So I'm going to write the second book to finish that chapter up, if you like, that chapter of my life.
Final chapters.
I do enjoy writing, always enjoyed writing. So I do want to start writing a novel of some sorts and using my experiences.
Fictional?
Yeah.
Fact?
Yeah, and just change, the characters, the names of the characters, but certainly draw on the past. I do want to do that. That's for my own personal satisfaction, because I feel I've got that in me.
Do you think that's a wee bit of therapy as well, Frank, to maybe just get it out there instead of bottling all?
I'll tell you what it is. It's frustration. It's frustration of hearing my wife say, for the last 40 odd years, you've wasted your life. Because she's known me since I was 15, knows me inside out, and has always had faith in me. So I want to do it for her. I want to say all the things you said to me for 40 odd years. Why are you doing this? Why are you committed so much to that? Why are you not doing what you're more than capable of doing? You've done it for everybody else, and that's half the problem.
Yeah. Do you think if it wasn't for your wife, Frank, you'd probably be dead or doing life?
Yeah, without a doubt.
Because you've spoke quite a lot about her.
Without a doubt.
You can see that's where...
Without a doubt. I call her my guardian angel, and there's no doubt about it. Even when I was 15, she was my guardian angel, because my family was going through a torrid time, mental health problems and so on. And you're immature, you don't understand. So when someone says, maybe you need to go and talk to a doctor, you go, fuck off, I ain't mad. You're basically calling your own mum and dad mad. But you don't know, do you? You're immature, you don't understand.
We're all mad.
And because I always mixed with older company, always in older men's company, I'm like, I'm all right. I'm one of the boys, isn't I? What do I want to go and see a fucking doctor for? Looking back on it, I probably did. I fucking probably did. I probably still do. But the thing is, she got me through that difficult. And again, when I went away,
Stuck by you.
I always say to people, no disrespect to any of my mates, and I've got some good mates, I say to them, don't take this the wrong way. You see her, she's a fucking better soldier than you'll ever be.
Yeah. She would need to be able to put up with your shite as well, especially through all the tough times, as you just says.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And
because that could push a lot of people over the edge.
You know what they say about women and their children, they're like lionesses. You go near their kids, you're in trouble. And I've been very lucky because she adopts that same attitude with me. If you're loyal to me, she'll be your best friend.
Yeah.
If you be disloyal to me, she fucking hate you. Absolutely hate You know. So now I've got some good. I've got probably the first time, you know, in fucking 60 years now, I suppose. I kind of know where I'm going. I've got a goal, and if I can turn that addictive nature into a positive thing, then I'm quite confident that things are going to be good.
But that's the beauty of life, Frank. No matter how fucked up your past is, no matter what you've been involved in, you're still here to tell the tale. As long as you can utilise that to help you become a better person and help others become better people, then I believe, I don't care who you are, what your past is, I'll speak to anybody, and it's quite clearly that I'll not pass judgment. We all make mistakes, we all do bad shit no matter what it is, but as long as you can learn from it, grow from it and make changes, then I take my hat off to anybody that does that. So fair play.
While we're across the table with each other, rather than emails and phone calls or whatever, I'll say respect to you as well, because as I say, I've watched every podcast that you've done, and I'll take a lot from it. I can assure you I'll take a lot from it, and I'll take a lot from the guests that you have on it, and you've had some really brave people. This sitting here to me is this isn't brave to me, but some of the people who've sat across from you, I cannot believe how brave they are to sit and talk to people. I mean, I've stood on a stage before now. I've had 12, 15 heavily armed men standing behind me in front of an audience, 200, 300 people who've been drinking all night, going mad, dancing on top of the fucking tables, singing their heart out to Simply the Best. Right? I'm telling you now, that's intoxicating. That's power. I'm not going to deny that. You can, your own mates are sitting there going with their fucking mouths open thinking, fuck this. He's even more powerful than what I realised. But it's how you use it, isn't it? It's how responsibly you use that influence, because you have got the power of life and death over people.
Definitely,
that's a big responsibility, and I'd like to think I never abused it. And now, as I say, I'd like to think that there's enough people I know that still respect me, and I'm kind of saying to them, listen, fellas, and a lot of them do say it to me. It's my time now. Help me now. It's your turn to help me and let me get to where I want to go. I won't leave you. I won't desert you. But I need to do this for me. I need to be able to turn around to my grandkids and turn around and say, your old granddaddy wasn't as fucking thick as you thought he was.
Can you get let go though when you go so far deep where people go, you've served your time, you've did what you had to do, go and do your thing, but if you ever get that call again, do you need to be there, Frank?
I'm going to say I don't get stopped so much now. I was getting stopped, even family holidays, coming back from Rhodes, Bruges, different places. It's stopped now because I got in touch with the Home Office, the border agency. I don't get pulled the same now. I don't mind getting pulled coming here or going to Belfast. I kind of see that as, part and parcel of what's gone on. But at the end of the day, it's just a difficult one because I haven't changed. I had this discussion on the train with my mate. I haven't changed, Sean. Sean, beg your pardon, sorry. All these interviewers don't look the same to me. They look the same. No, I haven't changed. What's happened is circumstances have changed. So when I'd be questioned and they'd ask me about, what do you think of this, what about that, blah, 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 I go, listen, I haven't changed. All you want to worry about is that the circumstances have changed. And I will support those circumstances. So there's peace. I'm glad there's peace. I want there to be peace. I want people to learn to live together. And the younger generation are learning to do it much more now. Appreciate what you've got in common rather than what divides you. And let's have none of it. Let's have no more funerals. Let's have no more going to visit people in prisons. It's horrible. It is not nice. But no, I haven't changed. I know I haven't, because it's like the football, isn't it? I haven't changed. Yeah. I'm still a football hooligan. I'm just an old football hooligan, and it wouldn't be appropriate now to go and fight at a football match. But I know if I'm walking up the road with half a dozen mates and there's half a dozen geezers the other side of the road, it only takes one of them to say the wrong thing. What are you going to do? You're going to resort to what you know. Away. So do you know the best thing to do? Don't go football.
Yeah.
Just don't go. And
Don't put yourself in that position.
Yeah, don't because you're almost admitting, well, you're old, aren't you now? You're almost saying I'm old. You know, I haven't got the bottle anymore. And you don't want to admit that. But what I've done instead is I've got a new path. You know, I know where I want to get to. And I won't be happy until I achieve it. I genuinely will not be happy. And if I can help other people along the way, and if I can tell my story, and I'd like to think that there are journalists, good journalists. There's someone I know recently who's just won a place in university. He's going to be paid to do it. And he's actually going to be doing a study on loyalism. He's a young kid. What does he know? What's he going to do? Going to go on Google, isn't he?
Drug dealer.
He's going to phone me up. Frank, you can't sort me out of the house, can you? I'm going to go, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
See, whereas what I've done is I've emailed him and I've said to him, if you need any help, you know, or advice or information, my account will be an accurate account. So that's why I put on my business card, you know, author, speaker, consultant. Get in touch with me, and I'll tell you. How
can people get in touch with you, Frank? For people who's maybe watching, maybe want to ask you questions, or
I'll give you this.
Yeah, we can put it up on the screen.
It will give you this. This is basically my my website. It's got my phone number on there, so I dare say people give me loads of dogs abuse as well. Maybe not. Maybe not mention the phone number, just the website.
We'll put we'll take the phone number out and we'll put this in the description, or whatever people who's maybe want you to do talks, or maybe somebody that's wanting information from you. But
like I say, you know, not everything has to be at a cost. If someone sends me an email and they ask me a question, and if I think I can give an open and honest answer, if it helps them in whatever they're trying to do or achieve, then fair enough. Because I would also get a degree of a satisfaction out of that as well.
Yeah.
And not least of all, that was the truth.
Well, Frank, listen, mate, appreciate
Well, any of these cuddles that he does, that Atwood fella, Sean, because he scared the life out of me the first time.
Frank, for coming on today and telling your story, I appreciate it. God bless. Good luck for the future.
God bless you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Thank you.